Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Post Loons live on Sota Soccer. I'm your host, Jacob Schneider, joined tonight by my co-host, Carter Hoffer. Carter, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jacob?
Big win for Minnesota United tonight. Lovely to hear Wonderwall saying with a full stadium when they won their Open Cup tie against the Philadelphia Union at home at Allianz Field. That was the first time we heard it this season. But tonight, now, we had, 15, 16,000 people. Much better, much louder, much more of an atmosphere. It's always brilliant to hear Wonderwall saying by the Wonderwall and the rest of the stadium. It's one of those, goosebumps on your arms, joy on your face. It's just, it's a moment where everybody connects, and it's beautiful. It's what soccer is. It's what the game is supposed to be about. So hearing that in the stadium, seeing the good vibes in the locker room, seeing the players smile, it's nice to have this little change up, and I think it's a real positive heading into a tough weekend for the Loons. Carter, initial thoughts on the game, initial thoughts on everything we saw?
The game was something that we kind of needed to see. It was definitely an ugly win, but it was nice to see that Minnesota United still has that defensive grinded out that we haven't really seen these last few games. The 3-0 loss to Sporting Kansas City, letting up equalizers at the end of regulation and at the end of extra time versus Philadelphia Union. It's nice to see that we can still be the team that grinds out points, because that's really what the blueprint has been this season. It's how we started off on that 5-game unbeaten streak, and it's what we lost during our, a 7-game run where we picked up one draw. So it's nice being able to get back to that. I think it's
100% agree. It's a big win for Minnesota United tonight, and I think we got a lot to talk about on the show tonight. But more than anything, you folks watching from home, you have a lot to talk about tonight. Send us in your questions on YouTube or on Facebook. Type in the comment section. Send them our way. Unfortunately, if you are watching on Twitter, you will not be able to send a question in the chat as it's not a compatible system with StreamYard, the system we use. However, our Twitter handles are listed on the screen. If you have a question and you are on Twitter watching and you are dying to ask it, tweet at me, tweet at Carter. We'll get it in the show. We'll talk. And if you type a comment in the section here during today's show, we will put it up on the screen. We'll talk with you, and we'll see what happens. But on top of that, if you are enjoying the Sota Soccer streams, if you are enjoying hearing me talk week in and week out about what we're seeing on this pitch with my co-hosts, or if we have a different co-host in here and there, or a different main host, whoever it is, if you're enjoying it, give us a thumbs up. Share you're watching right now. Send it to your group chat. Send it to your friends. Let's get an audience in here. Let's talk Minnesota United all night, folks. We've got a little bit over an hour in that mark to talk with you guys. Share on Facebook, share on YouTube, send the hearts in the stream if you're liking. Just double click the stream and you'll see a heart pop up. We love that. We love the interactions, and get those questions in over the next, half hour, 45 minutes to an hour. We'll see what we can talk about. And, there's a lot happening with the club right now, whether, it's the result from tonight, it's looking ahead to Portland, and then an Open Cup road trip to Houston again. What's going on with Emmanuel Reynoso? Was this Luis Amaria's best performance as a Loon this year? I think so. What's happening with Asani Dotson, Will Trapp, and Kervin Arriaga in the midfield? Joseph Rosales is now a winger. Let's talk it all through tonight. But, folks, we're going to recap real quick. Minnesota United 1-0 over the Houston Dynamo. Bongo Kule Klangwane with his third goal of the MLS campaign, 5th in all competitions in 2023. Massive, massive strides for the South African international. We're seeing so much improvement from him in tight spaces. He's making the correct decisions. He's backtracking defensively and getting forward. Dare I say it, but when I watched the UEFA Champions League semifinal today, he is playing the exact role that I personally see Jack Grealish playing for Manchester City, where it's not super savvy. He's not the one getting, all the interaction on the pitch, but he's so important when backtracking defensively. And when you need him to go forward, he will go forward and he will create. He will do. Look, he wears the crest, he wears the badge, and he fights for it. And he's turning into a complete new player in 2023. And he's become arguably Minnesota's most important player so far this season. So great performance from him. Great shutout from the defense. I think this is Kamar Lawrence's best performance in a Loons kit so far this season. Amazing defensive display late on a sliding challenge and a 1v1 with Dane St. Clair and Thor Ulfarsson. Big things from the defense tonight. Carter, what are your thoughts on the defense, the midfield's performance, Bongi? What are your biggest takeaways before we dig into anything deeper?
I mean, I love the comparison that you made with Bongi to Jack Grealish. Just watching Man City today, he's not necessarily like the one that's in the middle of everything, but he's absolutely making the decisions that help keep that offense churning, that help keep that offense in possession. So having a player like that is going to be fantastic for when the rest of our offense can maybe figure something out. The unfortunate part is that we don't have like a Holland or a De Bruyne or anyone along those levels. So we're going to need a little bit more from Bongi than what Man City would expect from like a Jack Grealish, but it's absolutely something I can see him doing. This 3-game run of his with 3 goals, he was just all over the field. He was making things happen, and watching him live at Allianz Field for the Open Cup against Philadelphia, he was just amazing to watch. Easily my favorite performance of the season from him.
Paul Forrester in the chat is saying Bongi's everything credit where it's due. Steve Clark was stellar tonight. Without some of those saves, we could have netted more. Either way, 3 points is massive. Paul, you are on point. What a performance from Steve Clark as a former JV goalkeeper, by the way, in high school. I watched those tonight, and I was blown out of my mind. The double save in particular was stupendous. And, you know, the alliteration was fantastic from Callum Williams on air. We were listening to it in the press box. What a call from him and Kalen Carr tonight, by the way. Brilliant job to those two. Always a pleasure catching up with Cal when he's here in Minnesota now that he's part of the Apple TV broadcast team. But Bongi was incredible. Touched on it a few minutes ago, but what a performance from him tonight. And, you know, we got to speak with him after the Philadelphia Union game in the locker room, and he is such a humble person, a contagious smile. Carter, you know what I mean? You ever have that one friend where, like, even if you are like having a terrible day or whatever, you just see him and they smile, you're like, dang it, like contagious smile. That's Bongi in the locker room. You walk in there, he looks at you and he's like giggling. He's just smiling. He's like, I want to give you a big hug. It's exactly how it is whenever you see him. And, you know, he's become such an important player for the Loons. You know, credit to him for tonight. Credit to Steve Clark. What do you think of the Dynamo goalkeeper's performance?
Oh, it was just ridiculous. He was standing on his head all game. We easily, as the comment said, we easily could have put another 2 or 3 past. We could have won this game much more than 1-0, which is maybe unfortunate that we didn't. But that Amaria header, the double save on, I believe it was Arriaga and Bongi, outstanding performance by the goalkeeper.
We've got Dave Valensky in the chat saying we played a great defensive game, and I felt the substitutions were perfect. Dave, I love that you touched on this because I didn't actually think of it when we were writing our post-game notes here for the stream. But Adrian Heath nailed his substitutions tonight, and I don't think they were expected. It was kind of all over the place. We saw Robin Lod move from the 10 to the 8 with a substitution. Then we saw Lod move back to the 10. We saw Luis taken off for Arriaga. Arriaga dropped deep. Like it was all over the place, but it was a beautiful mess. It was a beautiful, like, how do I even explain it? Nothing made sense in the moment, but looking back at it, Heath nailed everything tonight. And I think, you know, having a healthy Sang Bin going up against like a Zach McGraw this weekend in Portland he's going to be massive. He's got 90 minutes under his belt, no sweat. Like, that's huge for the Loons. And, you know, he's a young kid. He can turn around and play 60, 80, 90, whatever it is on Tuesday in Houston too. So resting him tonight and, you know, getting the win is really, really important for this squad. What did you see from, you know, the substitutions tonight? And then maybe let's touch on, you know, Luis Amaria's performance, knowing that he had Sang Bin watching from the sidelines and he had to kind of, you know, make himself known on the pitch tonight, Carter.
Yeah, substitution-wise, I agree. It really didn't make sense in the moment, but just looking back on it, everything, it worked. Obviously, we closed out the game. We won the game. There's nothing you can really fault there. Seeing Rosales on the wing is still a confusing moment for me.
Sure.
But when you make the substitutions that you make, players play where they can play. Players play where their spots open, and they clearly are able to just go where they're needed. There's a lot of fluidity in the Loons attack, in the midfield, in everything, which is a testament to them. It's definitely something that you'd rather have than not have. Maybe you'd like the players to be a little bit more, this is my position and I'm super good at it, rather than I can play any of these positions and I'm good at them, but not necessarily world class. I love seeing Sang Bin come in off the bench. He's just a great burst of energy. Anytime that he's on the field, I see him getting up the field, getting past defenders, really trying to make those runs in behind. that maybe we don't always find all the time from our other players. So I enjoy seeing him come on anytime that he's starting on the bench.
Yeah, and Dave Valensky's already been sending a question. He asked in the chat, is it going to be, are the games going to be on ESPN or just Fox and Apple TV? Dave, can you clarify in the chat which game you were talking about, whether it is Portland or Houston in the Open Cup, and then we can chat on that. But we've got Paul Forrester back in the comment section now. Something else worth noting, the pressure our guys put on the Houston backline and their goalkeeper, Steve Clark, forced a lot of bad passes and giveaways. It was really effective. Let's talk about that, because that's how the goal was scored. Pressure, giveaway, Bongi sees it, takes it. In the moment when Bongi shoots the goal, the winner, he is getting pushed down, and he is toe poking that ball with his left foot into the corner. Almost any other player on this Loons roster, and I'm talking everybody, if they are in that situation, they're not going to be able to get that shot off. He's got the long legs, but what Caitlin Carr talked about on the broadcast too is in that moment he saw that, and it reminded him of almost like a Brazilian street footballer, because it's the sort of thing they do. And the Loons are doing an advert right now, a video series on Bongi and his growing up and his coming up and how he became a professional footballer. And a lot of it was street ball. A lot of it was street football and, playing the barefoot game. And when you're doing that, a lot of it comes down to tight spaces. It comes down to quick passes, tidy footwork. And the strength he had on that toe poke was brilliant. And I don't think people realize how hard it is to get that shot off when you have a body crashing into you and you are falling down. It's a miraculous strike. It's a miraculous goal. And plaudits to Bongi, because, that was the game-changing moment. That gave the Loons momentum. It gave them confidence. It gave him confidence to play the rest of the match. And I think, we're going to look back on it, and that's a really, really impressive goal, even though it may not seem like it at first. Carter, any thoughts? Anything else to add to that?
Well, the forwards were absolutely just pressuring all night long. You could see just Franco and Amaria making these sprints forward to get pressure on the ball anytime it went backwards. It was Franco's pressure on the ball that allowed the ball to get that forced the pass from the Houston center back to go awry and end up with Bongi. So credit to him for making that happen. And just the pressure that the Loons can make is very important. And I love seeing it, because it's not something that all of our forwards do, but it is something that Amaria does very well. So if he's not going to be scoring goals, at least he has this going for him.
He's sort of a menace to the two center backs and the two center backs only. Or if he's playing off to one side, it's the left center back and the left back, or the right center back and the right back. It's not it's one or the other. It's not both. As we noticed tonight, Luis Amaria is not fast. He is not a striker who are you going to send in a 1v1 breakaway and he's going to beat the defender and the goalkeeper. It happened twice tonight. He lost the ball or misplaced a pass both times. And that is it's a flaw in his footballing system. That's a flaw in him as a striker. So now the Loons need to look at that and think, how do we get the most out of him in that situation? And it's not by sending him in that through ball. It's by playing that ball and telling him, turn and look. Don't run with it. Don't try and be the hero, because more often than not, you are going to get outpaced and outrun. But if you look quickly, take a touch, and maybe feed across the box, you'll see Robin Lud, you'll see Sang Bin, you'll see Bongo Kule Klongwane. It doesn't matter which forward it is, you'll see one of them, and maybe then, instead of trying to run with the ball, you'll play a precise pass, and that's where he will excel, I think. I think that's something they can work with, and I think it's something that will make Amaria's game even more positive than it showed tonight, because tonight really was a good performance from him, minus, a few errors inside the box. But you have to take what you can get, and what they got tonight was better than what we've seen of late from Luis. Josh Harrison is in the chat. Josh is saying, I thought our end game management with the lead improved much over games like Vancouver and Philly in the Open Cup. Better ideas on how to retain possession and keep the clean sheet. Yes, I spoke with Adrian Heath post-game on this in the press conference, and they moved to sort of a 4-5-1 shape over the final 12, 13 minutes of the match. And what Heath said they wanted to do was to just get an extra man in the midfield, because he knew the Dynamo were going to be trying things. He knew they were going to be pressuring and pushing. He knew that they had impact subs coming onto the field. Thor Ulfarsson was an absolute menace. Big striker, knows how to get in the minds of players. We've seen it in the league. We've seen it with him at the college level when he was at Duke University. he is one of those players that if he gets inside your head, he is inside there for the remainder of the game. The Loons stayed calm, they stayed composed, and they were successful in closing out the match. It was really impressive. I think you're spot on, Josh. And I look at the match in Vancouver, and it's beyond disappointing. Look at Philly twice. It happened twice against the Union, and beyond disappointing doesn't even begin to describe that, because you had an opportunity to win in regulation, and okay, didn't happen. You had an opportunity to win in extra time. It didn't happen. You should have. So then you have an opportunity in penalties to close it out. It doesn't happen. So you go to sudden death in penalties. 6th round doesn't happen. 7th round doesn't happen. 8th round, it happens. And that's dramatic as it can get. And man, being here for that game, I mean, my anxiety through the remainder of extra time and the match, and seeing Wagner score twice is just boom, 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 boom. I mean, Carter, how are you seeing the progress from this defense, the midfield, the management in these later stages of games, and what does it mean for their confidence moving forward? Do you think?
It's massive for their confidence. I think that the Loons were really beginning to walk a very tight line when it came to the games with Vancouver and giving up those leads, and the game at Philadelphia and giving up that lead. Because if it's something that you keep doing, it's almost something that you come to expect to happen. You almost expect that you're going to lose those leads, and it's, why are we even trying? And that's just a dangerous thing to have in your mind. It's a dangerous way to play the game. And it's something that I almost felt during this game. I was like, yes, we're doing well. We're keeping it together. I really hope that we don't blow it. I hope that we can keep it together. I hope that we defensively can just lock them down and finish this out, get that 3 points that we really desperately need. And I think up until the point where Kamar Lawrence came across and got that block on Ulf Larsson when he was one-on-one with the SC, as soon as that happened, I was good. I was like, we've maybe figured something out. We are just clicking on all cylinders. We're covering for each other. We're playing well defensively today.
No, and I 100% agree. And I think it's not something that's been talked about a ton, but I think it does need to be shared that Kamar Lawrence has not had a good start to his 2023 campaign. He has made himself more often than not in some of those late game situations. As tired legs begin to come about, he's become, sort of a reliability. And whether or not people want to hear it, whether or not it needs to be said, he has not had, the best of campaigns so far. And I think tonight's a big boost for him, because not only is that a crucial moment for him and the team, it helps Dane too. Dane hasn't had a great campaign. The stats haven't been friendly to him. Stats don't tell a story. Stats don't tell an eye test, but they haven't been friendly to him so far in 2023, coming off a 2022 MLS All-Star MVP campaign. It helps maintain the clean sheet, and it keeps the morale up. And, we talk, Adrian Heath's go-to saying is goals change games. We've heard it so many times. It's like, it's every time, he's about to say it, I can just go goals change games. And he doesn't even have to start, because I know what he's going to say. But in that moment, defensive plays like that change games. And they change the morale of the team in the locker room. They change, the stat lines. They change what happens going forward. Because a clean sheet is so important for a goalkeeper, so important for the defense. I asked Dana about it post-game, and, and he's thrilled, because, it means a lot to him. It means a lot to the defense. And, he and Mickey Tapias' relationship is continually growing. He says, there's still a language barrier, but some of the things they work on is, despite Dane's Spanish being, in his words, very bad, he uses players like DJ Taylor and Zarek Valentin, who are both bilingual, to, kind of have the connection with Mickey despite the language barrier. There's also a lot of nonverbal communication, he says, and, their partnership's continually growing. And I think we're starting to see it, because that left center back is so crucial for a goalkeeper who is more often than not right-footed. So having, someone you can trust on your weak foot, it's incredible. So, we're seeing that growth. We're seeing that partnership flourish. Real positive growth from the defense, from the goalkeeping area over the past few weeks. So, folks, quickly, we've got 12 of you in the stream right now. We've gotten as much as 18. We're having great numbers tonight. I love the interaction so far. I love the questions. Reminder, If you are on Twitter, you can't send us a question. We can't read you on air. We want to. So our Twitter handles are under our names on the screen. Tweet at us. Send us your questions. We'll read them on air. Carter and I will keep checking our phones or our laptops or whatever we have Twitter open on. And we'll be sure to get your questions here. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, send those questions and be like Eric Grady, Dave Valensky, David Marbury, Eric Grady again, and Josh Harrison, Paul Forrester. Thank you all. We love the interaction. We love speaking with you guys. We'd rather, hear your input and talk about your questions than, talk about the blurbs we have written on a Google Doc. All right. We'd rather hear from you guys. And we'll continue the conversations here. We'll keep the questions going. Let's see. Dave Valensky asked earlier about the status of MLS matches and where they're going to be streamed this year. Dave, unfortunately, Apple TV is where you're going to see the majority of MLS matches this season. There will be 1 or 2 national broadcast games per weekend that you will see, and that can be found on the MLS website. There won't be one every weekend, but if they are, it's going to be typically on Fox, FS1, ABC, one of the partner stations, and you'll see that on the MLS website. But there's 6 free games. Ooh, excuse me. There's 6 free games on Apple TV every weekend. I don't think people realize that. You don't have to have the Apple TV subscription to watch MLS every weekend. Maybe your favorite team won't be there, but there are 6 free games. Minnesota United's game was free on Apple TV tonight. They've had like 4 free games so far this season, but you can catch 6 games in action on Saturday night for free. And I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And if you do subscribe to Apple TV and MLS Season Pass, MLS 360 rules. It's the coolest thing. Do I like the commercial breaks? No, but I can get picky with other things too. And like that's the smallest thing to get picky about. It's so nice for MLS to have a home. It's so nice for dedicated coverage. It's so nice to see veterans like Sasha Kleshton, Bradley Wright Phillips returning to the league and giving it a voice and, helping grow the game. I think Apple TV is doing a phenomenal job of that. Carter, what are your thoughts on the Apple TV broadcast so far this year? What have you seen? The production, the personnel, the on-site coverage from commentators. I'm a little biased there. I love that. But I think it's a positive for everybody. What are your takeaways?
I mean, anytime that the Loons play anything other than the early game, I have MLS 360 going up until maybe like 15 minutes before kickoff, so I can still get a little bit of behind the scenes on what's happening with Minnesota United. So this weekend, when we play our 9:30 game, I'm going to have the MLS 360 through all of the games. Yeah. It's what you want to see. You want to see all the attacking moments. You want to hear people talk about them, what's making them happen, why do they work. It gives you more insight into the other games, and it just really gives you an insight into the MLS landscape. It helps you learn what's happening with the league.
No, 100%. And I'm looking ahead to Saturday's schedule, and the 6:30 slate has some really good matches. I'm going to highlight Cincinnati and Columbus myself. I cannot wait for that Columbus attack to go up against that Cincinnati defense. 2 amazing teams. I'm sure MLS 360 will be honed in on that one. And that's a good prelude to Minnesota-Portland, It'll be a fun weekend for MLS, fun weekend for the Open Cup starting Tuesday. A lot of soccer happening over the next few days. I don't think we have a day going forward without soccer if you're a nutcase like me. Tomorrow we've got Europa League semifinal knockouts. Friday we have European leagues. Saturday we have get the opportunity to watch MLS in the evening and be devastated by our Premier League sides in the morning because they continually underperform. And then on Sunday, if your Premier League side is playing then, you get to be devastated and watch them continually underperform too, unless you're Manchester City. So, nonstop soccer, folks. What's there to hate? What's there to hate? Let's see. What do we got in the comment section here now? I love this one. Carter, I will let you take it. Trap and unnecessary yellow cards. A match made in hell?
There's nothing Trap loves more than a yellow card, isn't it? I don't understand how this man isn't suspended for like 5 games a year, maybe 6, maybe 10. Trap loves the yellow card, and I don't necessarily think that his aggressiveness that gets him the yellow card is ever really rewarded. Like there's CDMs where you're like, yeah, that's fine. Go get your yellow cards. You're absolutely a monster on the field every other time. But I really don't see that with Trap. He'll make a few good tackles. He'll save maybe, one-on-one chance. But otherwise, he's just really going into these challenges and picking up these unnecessary yellow cards. And it's made me wonder if he's really the best midfield pairing. I don't think that Will Trapp is necessarily the future of Minnesota United going forward. I think his time may have already passed. I really like watching Hassani Dotson and Kervin Arriaga play together. I think that they fit together really well, and I think that is something that I would really like to see going forward a lot more.
I think so I asked Adrian about that post game, and the reaction was that they've got a lot of games coming up. They've got to play. I'm going to count tonight, so the stat is including tonight, folks. They've got 7 games to play until June 10th. Ridiculous. And then counting June 10th, there's 3 games in June. How does that make sense? Who looked at the MLS schedule and said 7 in 27 days, and then 3 in the remaining 24? And if they win in the Open Cup, it becomes more games, by the way. They get 8. Mm-hmm. So if they win in Houston next week, they get 8, and it's likely going to be the winner of the Austin game who they get drawn against. So either another big long road trip, or they get lucky and they host. It's not going to be close. So, I mean, congestion's coming. Congestion is here, and it needs to be addressed, and the players need to know that they have to take care of themselves. They have to control what they can control, whether it's cryotherapy, whether it's massages, and I spoke with both Hassani Dotson and Dane St. Clair about that post game. And, they both said each player's kind of got their own thing that they'd go through in terms of recovery. Some of them wear like cryo boots in their bed while they sit and relax. A lot of guys will do ice baths. But the big thing that they both said was massages, and a lot of massages, ankles, calves, thighs, shoulders, back, doesn't matter. Your entire body needs to be loose, and you need to make sure that you are able to consistently recover in a healthy manner. So, you mentioned the Arriaga pairing with Hassani Dotson. I think we're going to see more of that going forward, but also has to be noted that I think Will Trapp had a fantastic first 45 minutes for Minnesota tonight. I don't think anybody was super standout from like 45 to 60 in the second half. I think it was very, very calm, very just tempo-based. But that first half, I think Trapp was really good. He controlled the tempo of the match, and it allowed Hassani to go forward a little bit. It allowed him to play more of a freedom role with Trapp on an underlying deep 6 role. And, he is the club captain. He has a large voice in the locker room. He's very well-spoken to media. He touched on the players-only meeting with Manuel Reynoso this past Monday, and how Ray spoke with the group, and then Will told media, players' thoughts, how they felt, all that. If you're interested in reading more on that, my piece is up on sotasoccer.com about that. You can take a look and see both Heath and Trapp's comments on the Reynoso situation. We'll touch on Ray more in a little bit, but check it out in the meantime if you're interested. But, with congestion here, Carter, I think you're going to see the midfield rotate between those 3 a bit more. And come the summer window, you might see some movement with the current player pool, but you also might see, an extra player come in. We'll see what happens. But I'd say the summer window would be a telltale time for the midfield. So jumping back to the comments section, we've got Eric Grady sending a bunch of comments. He mentioned how they lose attackers in transition and defense, especially on a weak side. A couple times in the last 5-7 minutes, there were free runners, but Houston didn't get them the ball. I think that a big part of that, Eric, is due to Hector Herrera not playing for Houston tonight. What a crucial red card for Minnesota. I'm trying to think of a comparison. It would be like we already mentioned the Champions League semifinals from today, Carter. Let's bring it back. It would be like Manchester City losing KDB. Let's be honest. Hector has been that important to the Dynamo this season. He's had a resurgence. He had a terrible campaign in 22. Let's be honest. Let's not hold back. It was not at the level where it needed to be for a player of his caliber. He was not making the impact he needed to. But in 2023, he's come out guns blazing. He's been phenomenal for the Dynamo. Not having him tonight really affected them in the midfield, because also I look at Coco Carrasquilla. I think how talented of a player he is. He plays better with Hector alongside him. And Artur in that midfield role, they just didn't have the chemistry. They just didn't play off of each other in the way that he would with Hector. So, that played a big role in that. And I think that needs to be noted. But also looking ahead to Tuesday, their two best players are back in Bassi and Herrera. It's going to be a completely different game. Their best attacker is going to be back on the pitch, and their midfield maestro is going to be back on the pitch. Entirely different game for Minnesota United. They can look at the film tonight. Hassani Dotson mentioned this, they're going to look at the film tonight, but they have to recognize that it is likely going to be an entirely different team playing on Tuesday due to the introduction of their two most important players. Erica mentions one last thing I want to touch on. It was nice having Cal on the call tonight. What a delight. What a delight Cal Williams is. And Kalen Carr is a fantastic analyst too. Carter, what did you hear on the broadcast? And, what was it like hearing Cal Williams call Minnesota United again?
He just has such a nice voice, doesn't he? It just makes you feel like you're at home anytime you hear him. I could listen to Cal Williams say anything, read anything. Man should go into audiobooks once he's done with this.
He's not. Absolutely. He doesn't have the Scouse accent that Jamie Carragher has on CBS, does he?
No, he does not. No, he does not. But no, like you said, and like you've touched on earlier tonight, it's always nice to have Cal. He knows what he's doing, and he's so good at it.
Yeah, David says the same thing here. Love Cal, best play-by-play guy in MLS. I absolutely love Cal. I think he's brilliant. And he's a fantastic, person too. He is so kind to all of us here. And I can't say enough good things about him. But folks, it's that time of the show. We're nearing the halfway point. We need to thank our sponsor. And tonight we are sponsored by Better Edge. Have you ever wished there was a website that you could use to make bets with your friends? The days of using cash or Venmo for one-to-one bets are over, my friends. Better Edge, BettorEdge, and is a Minneapolis-based company, and they've revolutionized the social sports betting scene, allowing their users to bet with or against each other on NBA, NHL, MLB, and soccer competitions like the English Premier League, the UEFA Champions League, and, of course, Major League Soccer. They also offer weekly pick'em competitions as well, like our very own Sota Soccer MLS Pick'em, where you can bet real money or edge coin, which is play money, and make your picks for the weekend's games. Better Edge is not a sports book that profits off of your loss. You don't bet against Better Edge. You bet against other users on the platform, which is why it's legal to use in Minnesota and 46 other states nationwide. Sign up today and get a free $20 in your account when you visit betteredge.com/loons. That is BetterEdge.com/loons and create your account. Again, betteredge.com/loons to sign up and get $20 in your account today, courtesy of our friends at Better Edge. Thank you for sponsoring tonight's show, and thank you for sponsoring Sota Soccer Better Edge. Back to the conversation here. We've got a new friend in the chat. Any Big Blue. Why is Joseph Rosales, a winger, questionable to you, Carter? He combines well with Fraga. He can bring the ball up the sideline well, and he'd allow you to keep an Arriaga Dotson in midfield. So, Carter, you got to talk now. What's your mindset? What are you feeling? You being called out in the chat. Just kidding. No. What's your thought process here, though? Why do you not like Joseph Rosales at the left wing, at the 10, kind of in that attacker role?
I would just much rather see – I like seeing Rosales as an attacker, absolutely. I just would much rather see him play through the midfield. I think that having a three-person midfield when he comes on would be a much better use of our player personnel. I think if we keep Franco Fragapane and Bongi on the wings, and then we have a striker up top, if we have three people in the midfield, we could absolutely just play through the middle more. And that would allow room for our wingbacks to get up. And I would just like to see Rosales in that midfield area more. It's more conducive to what the Loons are trying to do, I think.
I think what you're saying is maybe a 4-3-3?
Yeah. I think that when he comes on, we should not be in a 4-2-3-1. I like the idea of having that 4-3-3 when we make these substitution changes, because I don't think that our personnel depth can keep the 4-2-3-1 going past substitutions. I think maybe when Reynoso comes back and he can just sit at the 10 all game, all 90 minutes, that's maybe a more viable option, because Rosales does play well on the wing, like he says. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I could very well be wrong. We never know. Well,
that's usually what happens, right, Carter?
Well, there's a reason that I'm on a podcast rather than on a sideline.
Fair enough. Hey, that's now. That's not the future. Never know what happens. Get your USSF license and maybe, He'll be the next head coach of Minnesota United in 20 years, Carter.
Well, Heath will still be there in 20 years. You think they'll get rid of him?
Funny you say it. Adrian's told me many times in like a 1v1 situation, just individuals chatting that after his time is up as a head coach, whenever that may be, he wants to move into a front office role, and he'd love to oversee, the footballing department for sorts. He thinks he has a great mind for that, and it's something he'd be super interested in. But there's still years ahead as a coach. So very interesting you bring that up, though, just because, that's something I happen to know. And, I think, for what it's worth, I do think he has a great footballing brain, and I think that would be an area where he may excel. So fun little comment there. Folks, if you are still watching the show, send us a question. Like get in the comment section right now and give us your thoughts. What do you think about Portland looking ahead this weekend? What are your worries with the Open Cup? And who wants to talk Emmanuel Reynoso? I mean, I think that's the biggest story here. We haven't had a single question on Ray, and we're like 35 minutes in. I'm genuinely stunned, Carter, that nobody has mentioned Reynoso's name in the chat because in my last show, that was all I saw. That was every single question was, so what's the update with Ray? What do you think's going to happen with Ray? Is he still suspended? I can talk a little bit more on that, but I need someone to ask the question. In the meantime, we'll do a brief look ahead here, Carter. Portland Timbers this weekend, and then U.S. Open Cup, Houston Dynamo on Tuesday. Let's talk about the Timbers. Right now, they are playing against RSL, and the score is 0-0 at halftime. Your XG is 0.13 for the Timbers and 0.61 for RSL. It is a home game for RSL at the very famous America First Field, a name that Major League Soccer fans have had some thoughts on over the past few months. But RSL has been – they're having that season where it's like, I don't think you're good, but you are going to make every team that comes and plays you fumble in one way or another. Interesting campaign from them. But the Timbers, they've been good. And I think the biggest question mark going into Saturday is which Evander is going to show up, what a player they have, what a player he can be. He hasn't quite lived up to the $12 million price tag that he came with this offseason from, I believe it was Midtjylland, but don't quote me on that one. I might be wrong. But a player like that is one of those individuals. He's like a Reynoso. He is, make magic out of nothing. Ibsen. Let's use Ibsen as the example because everybody loves Ibsen, and I don't think anybody can ever say a bad thing about him. He's like Bongi, just makes you smile. One of those players. And I think, it's a big test for Minnesota. They've had success on the road, and then it's a quick turnaround to the Open Cup. A lot on the plate. But we get to talk about Reynoso now? Somebody asked a question. Okay. Carter, you want to talk about Ray?
Oh, no, you take it away. You've got all the information.
Oh, all right, folks, here we go. Eric Grady says we talked about him. 6'3" is the over-under for Ray return. Here's the thing is Emmanuel Reynoso is still a month away from playing in a match for Minnesota United at a competitive level. And I don't know if that's something that everybody wants to hear. I don't know if it's something that people are like, are you serious? Or like, yeah, I expected that. Because the fact of the matter is you are talking about a footballer who has not played a competitive match since late October 2022. You're talking about a footballer who has not had a competitive practice since late October of 2022 until this past week. He's not match fit, folks. And on top of that, he has to earn the respect of the locker room back. He's got to earn the respect of the team back. A lot of faith, a lot of trust was lost in the, how do I put it? The miscommunication, the lack of communication, the months-long absence with no resolve, the concept that he just didn't tell anybody what was going on, and by doing so, he hurt his family. Footballers are family members. Soccer teams are a big family. Carter, do you ever play team sports growing up?
I did, yes.
So you probably can understand when I say this, those guys that you play with, they're like your brothers. They are family to you. During the time you are in training, practice, playing a match, playing a game, whatever it is, you would do anything for your team to see them succeed, see you succeed. And at the end of things, you're all family still, because that's how it works. You bond, you grow together, you learn together, you make mistakes together. And the fact of the matter is they went into 2023 without him, and he hurt them. It hurt the trust, hurt the bond, and it needs to be mended again. It's going to take time. It's going to take open conversation, and he's going to have to use his actions, not his words. Because a lot of the time, actions speak louder than words. And as cliche as that is, as cliche as it sounds, actions do speak louder than words. And he needs to show not only on the pitch, but in the locker room, but in those team meetings, but in those moments where it's critical to grow as a group. He needs to be that guy that says, I made that mistake, and let me show you why you need to trust me again. Let me show you why we need to grow as a group again. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Eric Grady in the chat says, he's 27. He can sub on for 30. Here's the thing. Despite, him being a very fit individual, despite him being a very talented footballer, fact of the matter is he's not match fit. And if you put a player out there who's not match fit, you risk hurting him. Imagine if he missteps and rolls his ankle and he's out for 6 more weeks, when in reality, it was a 10-minute cameo off the bench to try and get him minutes, but he wasn't ready for those 10 minutes. It's hypotheticals. It's what-if situations. But you need to ensure that he's ready to go out there before even bringing him on as a sub-cameo. He has to be able to play 60 minutes before he plays 10. He has to be able to play 90 minutes before he's able to play 40. You need to ensure that he is ready to go for those situations, because the last thing you want to do is hurt him or have an issue with him. And I think that is the biggest takeaway from that situation. Getting him ready, preparing him. My assumption, and I looked at the broadcast tonight when Kalen Carr and Cal Williams were talking, they mentioned 4 to 6 weeks, and I think that's a great timeline to look at. Obviously, we can't take them word for word, but I think that's a valuable, not a valid, I think that's a valid timeline to look at. Is 4 to 6 weeks before, we see him, competing with the group at a high level. And that's when they're going to need him. They're going to need him after all this congestion, when everyone's tired, having someone come in and be like, hey, maybe I can help. That's big. So looking at that, I think, and Dave Valensky in the chat here says, especially when everybody goes after Reynoso's ankles. I mean, how many times, Carter, have we seen an MLS match with Minnesota United and seen Emmanuel Reynoso out on the pitch and players just manhandling him because he's a tricky little bastard on the pitch? Like, how many times a game do you think, on average, would you see that?
I'd say it's at least 5. I mean, it's the way that defenders, they quickly realize that's the only way they can keep up with him is if they just start chopping at him.
And it reminds me, here's my moment to bring up Chelsea on the stream, which I do on a weekly basis, folks. Beyond the depressing, thing that's happening with him right now. It reminds me of watching like a 2016, 2017 Eden Hazard with Chelsea, and how one individual led an entire front line by simply being a menace with the ball close to him and players forcing to chop him down so that he doesn't feed anybody else. And I think that's I think it's the comparison I make. For Minnesotans, I might go back to the 2009 NFC Championship game with the Minnesota Vikings and the New Orleans Saints. And I remember seeing pictures of Brett Favre's ankles and legs post-game, and how black and blue they were because players were going after him because he was leading the Vikings charge that night. And they tried to take him out. And I just remember that. I remember seeing those images, and I'm like, when you are that talented, when you're that important to a team, the opposition might have to do whatever it takes to, benefit them. And in that situation, that may have been what it is. And with Minnesota United, more often than not, it's stopping Ray by fouling him. Carter, why don't you take this one? Hypothetical. What if we go through with trading Ray? They mentioned on the wrap-up show that 4 teams have already inquired about him last week. So, Eddie, can you clarify in the chat, the MLS wrap-up show from tonight or this past week? Because I watched last week's and I may have missed that segment, but I do not remember seeing it. Eddie, was that tonight's MLS wrap-up show? And Carter, take it away. What would you say to a hypothetical of Minnesota United trading Emmanuel Reynoso?
I think that the only way that happens is if the bond in the locker room is actually irreparable. I don't think, or if they're concerned that this is something that he might do again. I don't think that he's a player that the front office wants to get rid of unless there's reason for it. So I think in either of those two hypotheticals, it may happen. And then I think if it does happen, they're going to want a lot for him. I remember, what was it, back during the World Cup, I think you were talking to us about what the price tag that MNUSC had on Reynoso at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Could you remind me of that conversation?
Well, Adrian Heath offered him to Everton last summer after the international friendly. He said, "Hey, I've got this really talented player, and I think he could benefit you guys." And he didn't. I shouldn't say offer him. He told them about this player they have. He told them, "Hey, he could. He can play in the Premier League. You guys should take a look at him." And Everton lost 4-0 to an MLS team, and then they've had a 2022-23 campaign they have. And a player of his quality would likely break into their starting 11. Let's be honest. Sorry, Jeremy. I don't know if you're watching. He's in the press box with me. Founder of Sota Soccer, an avid Everton fan. I'm looking over at him right now, and I don't see him looking at me, so I don't think he's listening. But Everton have been hot garbage, Jeremy. I hate to say it, but they could use a player like Emmanuel Reynoso. I talk about the hypothetical of possibly trading Emmanuel Reynoso. I mean, I don't think it's out of the picture, but I think it comes down to the fact that the Loons need a player of his caliber, and if you officially lose him, how do you replace him? Their success with transfers of late hasn't been like a 10 out of 10. There have been a few hits. We don't know if Sangbin has a hit yet. The early showings from Sangbin have been promising, but let's look at Mender Garcia. A bit underwhelming for a young DP. Let's look at Luis Amaria, underwhelming for a DP. Look at a player like Tomas Chacon, Angelo Rodriguez, Wanchope Abila. I mean, there's been some big names and big players brought in here, and they haven't been hits. The Loons can't afford to miss it in Carter. And if a player like Emmanuel Reynoso were to depart from the squad, you'd have to hit. There are no excuses if you don't. So a lot on the table, and that would be Adrian Heath's job. It would be, maybe some higher ups too. I mean, that's a big, big choice to make. And if they choose to go that route, that's the route they choose to go. But they cannot miss. They cannot miss if they choose to go that route.
Absolutely, you can't go from a proven product to something that just does not live up to the hype, because that'll put everything off of the rails if that's something that ends up happening. Yeah,
and I mean, let's use the hypothetical. If the Loons were to sell Reynoso, if I'm throwing it back to my brain, I think it was like a $6 million transfer fee to get him here. I don't know if you remember, Carter. I don't know if you remember offhand. I don't, but I want to say it was 6. The Loons would need at least 8. They wouldn't take less than 8. And if they do, it's very unfortunate. And it's probably due to the current situation. But that's strictly a hypothetical, guys. Nothing official. We're not reporting this. I just want to clarify that this is not a report. This is us having a conversation on a podcast with a question that came into our chat. Just confirming, just getting that out of the way, folks. We're strictly just having a conversation here about a possible hypothetical. So it's an interesting situation. I do think the July transfer one will be a telltale summer for the Loons. Yeah. So, folks, we are at the 48-minute mark. Let's get those final questions in here before we do a wrap-up. In the meantime, we're going to touch on what happened today in MLS. A lot happened. Carter, was there one game in particular from today that caught your eye?
Well, Atlanta just drubbed Colorado, didn't they? 4-0. And most of it came at the very end, and they were just piling on goals. But it's always crazy to see a team just pound it goal after goal after goal when you get to watch a team like Minnesota United as your favorite.
Quick clarification from Eric Grader here. It was $5 million. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. But jumping back to our MLS wrap-up, on top of that 4-0 bashing of Colorado, Thiago Almada missed a first-half penalty. So it should have been 5. And that's a tough loss for the Rapids. But Charlotte FC beat Chicago Fire 2-1. Big win for Charlotte FC. And Brandon Cabridge had a brace. Good for him, young Canadian. And then here's the best one from the day. LA Galaxy continue to lose games. They continue to look pitiful on the field. I'm going to call them out. A 2-0 loss to the Columbus Crew. Absolutely nothing from them. A .47 XG, 2 shots on target. I mean, even though it's on the road, how can the Galaxy go from a powerhouse for so many years to looking like this and not seeing any change? I can't help but think Greg Vanney's on the hot seat this coming week. And they have not hit on any of their major signings beyond, let's say, Ricky Puig, Chicharito Hernandez, and then Joveljic I'm going to call Joveljic a hit too. But beyond that, Cabral, Douglas Costa, I mean, they've been absolute misses. And that's the LA Galaxy we're talking about. You ask a European stranger, hey, what MLS team do you know? What are they going to say, Carter?
They're going to say the Galaxy. They may say LAFC at this point.
They're going to say the Galaxy because of David Beckham. That's why they're going to say it if they do. It's because of David Beckham. Embarrassing loss for them. Embarrassing season. I expect more from the Galaxy, and I think MLS does as a whole too. We'll continue moving forward. Cincinnati with a 3-0 bashing over Montreal. Montreal have had a really good month. Tough loss against Cincy, but Cincy's a really good team. I don't think, you look at that and say Montreal are a terrible team still. They had a really good month. They've shown a lot of progress of late. I think this also is, one of those moments where I'm like, Cincy's the real deal. They're doing this with, knowing that Brenner is leaving this summer, and they're still doing this with him and without him in a few games too. It's beyond impressive. Orlando, NYCFC 1-1, Union, DC United 0-0. Quick shout out to my guy Wayne Rooney. What a turnaround he's had at DC United. It might not be pretty, it might not be thrilling, it might not be exciting at the moment, but they're balling. And DC are starting to look like the MLS side they once did in recent years. And it's really, really fun because those fans deserve it. They've got a great stadium. They're hosting the MLS All-Star Game this summer. And we all know how talented of an individual and how brilliant of a footballing mind Wayne Rooney has. So, really, really cool to see that. Toronto and the Red Bulls 0-0. Dallas 2-1 over Vancouver. Minnesota 1-0 win over Houston. Nashville SC with a 2-1 win over Inter Miami. Big performance from Hani Mukhtar. What's new? That's a week in, week out thing. Hani Mukhtar just balling out in MLS because why not? And we've got 3 ongoing games here, folks. Real Salt Lake and Portland Timbers are 0-0 in the 54th minute. We're 11:22 p.m. Central right now saying this. LAFC 2-1 over Sporting KC in the 86th minute. And then, look at this, Austin FC up over the Seattle Sounders 2-1 in the 85th minute. And can you guess which former Loon scored for the opener for Austin tonight? Can you think on that, Carter?
Would that be the one and only Ethan Finley?
Ethan Finley. And then here's a fun one for me personally. Giassi Zardes with the second. Very easy to forget Giassi is playing with Austin due to the fact that they have Maxi Arruti and Driussi. But good for him. Good for him to get on the score sheet. And that wraps up our MLS wrap-up for the day, folks. Big day for games. Big result for Atlanta United. Cincy are the real deal. And a big win for Minnesota. We've got a few more questions here, and then we're going to wrap up, folks. Paul Forrester says, Cincy caught my eye, they're real deal. Paul and I are on that mentality wave. I like it. Same thinking. And then, let's see. Dave Valensky back in here says, it's too bad I don't have a promotion on relegation in the MLS. I'd love to see Kansas City and the Galaxy get relegated. That's probably a rivalry thing. I think everybody would look at it and say the Galaxy, based on their performances this season, deserve relegation. Jeremy, if you're listening, you're to my right now, still in the press box. They're basically the Everton of MLS right now. Throwing a little shade to my coworker and boss, I guess you'd call him. Hollings said just 85th minute just now to take the lead in LA. No way. Oh, it's taken away. Hollings says offside. Wow. So LAFC and Sporting KC 1-1. Are Sporting KC back, Carter? I wonder.
Let's not give them too much.
I love it. I love it. All right, folks, if you got any other questions, type them in the chat right now. We're going to wrap up with a 55-minute mark. I got to get home from Allianz Field still. I got about a 35-minute drive home. I got to let Carter go. He's got shenanigans still this evening to get up to probably, whether it's,
I got to get my coaching license, man.
Got to get his
Starting
coaching
now.
license. Got to get those classes in, guys. And if you'd like to support Carter's coaching fund, I'm sure you can DM him on Twitter, and maybe he'll get like the $3,000 it does to take a class. Ridiculous fees for U.S. soccer.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you got to get a club to sponsor you at this point. You can't single-handedly do it, which is a bummer. Paul Forrester says getting out of there before midnight. Unheard of. I'm very grateful. They're on the road in Portland this weekend. 9:30 West Coast kickoff is going to be brutal because we'll get over around 11:20. Press conference, 11:40 it'll start. We'll get out at midnight. And I believe I'm hosting our show again Saturday night. So I think we're going to go live around midnight, folks. Wow, that's going to be brutal. If you aren't hanging around Saturday's show at midnight, you're a real one, and we appreciate you. Before we close out here tonight, I just want to reiterate how grateful we are for your attendance in tonight's show. The sharing you guys do on social media, the likes, the questions, the comments, everything. It means the world to us. We're continually growing as an outlet. We're all content creators. We're all very passionate about Minnesota soccer. Myself, I'm continually growing, and you guys play a big role in that. So it means the world to us. Going forward, though, if you'd like to continually support us, subscribe to our Patreon. Little as $3 a month. That's $36 a year. I'm a big coffee snob. That's my thing. I like to go get coffee in coffee shops. I spend too much money doing it, and it costs me like $6 or $7 for a coffee. 2 months of subscribing to Patreon is one coffee, folks. That's all it takes. Continually support us. That goes to all of us that cover Minnesota United, Minneapolis City, lower league soccer, Minnesota Aurora this summer, the Forward Madison. Eventually, we're going to see a Forward Madison women's team in the USL, in their USL Women's League that was just launched this past week. It's fantastic. We're continually, elevating as a team, and it's not without you guys. And a quick sneak peek: if you are still in the chat, if you're still watching, next week we're going to be doing a massive Patreon giveaway on Twitter featuring a signed photo from a very famous Minnesota United player that played with the club both in the NASL and in MLS. That narrows it down. I'll leave you guys to guess it, and we'll have some fun little things to go with it. And a big shout out to our winner from tonight's giveaway that I did on Twitter. Won 2 2018 Topps trading cards autographed by Sam Cronin and Matt Lampson, former Minnesota United players. Very cool. We're going to keep doing this kind of stuff. If you keep tagging along, if you keep following us, we'll do our best to reward you. We'll do our best to continue to bring you the stories, the news, everything you guys want to hear. Carter, anything else before we wrap up and get out of here?
Not a thing. Take us home.
All right, folks. For Carter Hoffer, I am Jacob Schneider, and this is Post Loons on Sota Soccer. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you. We'll see you Saturday night in #MLS After Dark. Thank you again. Have a great night, everybody.